I also want someone to tell me, hurry up. Janis Joplin was merely an 36-born singer. No one outside of San Francisco was aware of her name. Then 14 arrived. At the Monterey Pop Festival, seconds that altered everything, even the jaw of Mama Cass fall. That fleeting moment became the first female rock star from a tiny town superstar. However, those same 14 seconds began a countdown as well. After 3 years, at 27, she would be dead. What took place in those seconds? How come it sealed her doom? You may be surprised by the response. January 19, 1943, was Joplin's birthday. Texas's Port Arthur. Her birthplace was a harsh, traditional setting full of oil refineries and rigid beliefs regarding how individuals ought to live. Her dad, Seth, was an engineer by profession. It was stable, solid work in a town where the majority of the oil industry was relied upon by people to provide for their families. Her mom, Dorothy, was employed at a nearby college. The Joplin family appeared to be a perfect fit into the shape of honorable middle-class existence. Janis, however, didn't. She felt out of place even as a little child. Location in a town where girls were expected to remain silent, courteous, and compliant. She possessed an excessive amount of creativity and inquiries for such a life. While she junior high in the latter half of the century, Janis began to distinguish herself in ways that created individuals in Port Arthur unicy. The talented child with creative talent once praised, she turned into the girl who came up against racism in the town and strict guidelines for women. She became a target. Neighbors and classmates started dead to consider her an outcast. The shift occurred, swift and forceful. Once popular, Janis turned into an outsider, but she was propelled by that pain toward being the truthful, sentimental. The world would eventually know this artist. Thomas Jefferson School was even worse. Not only did her classmates make fun of her if they ripped her to shreds, they contacted her _lover, creep, pig, and freak. They made fun of her weight, her scars from acne, and above all, her unwillingness to comply with assembly. Janis accepted the friendship with black pupils and to express against racism. A location such as Port that was considered betrayal. The bullying was cruel. It caused severe scarring that followed her throughout her life, yet it made her more resilient as well. She accepted the pain and transformed it into disobedience. She wore boldly wear her outsider name and allow it to mold the audacious, unvarnished voice that would soon startle the music industry. In the midst all of that brutality, Janis discovered a handful of pals who transformed her life. She was introduced by these adorable children to Jack Kerouac's creations. His tales of liberation and disobedience bequeathed her heart. She went with them to roadhouses from New York to Port Arthur, Orleans. She fell in love there with the youth. She heard folk jazz and blues music. She was shown by the beatnik that there was Arthur's entire world. Outside of narrow-mindedness of her birthplace, that song was incorporated into her spirit and established the framework for all that she would develop into. Although Janis's inability to read music was due to a gift that left anyone who heard her in awe, she has the ability to sing like the blues greats, Big Mama Thornton, Bessie Smith, and Odetta. She didn't simply imitate them. She sensed their suffering, strength, and timing. Their music became a part of her. She taught herself how to sing in a raw way, and power that was impossible to falsify. Her voice was untamed, honest, and like a hurricane. And enduring. That voice cracked above the obstacles of a male dominate and turned her into a celebrity. In 1963, Janis departed from Texas. She almost hitched a ride with her travel 50 hours to San Francisco, but each had helms. It was not just it was a way out. In San Janis discovered Francisco, a city rich aftos who also didn't match the molds. She performed in coffee shops and pubs. She acted barefoot, wore jeans, and sang with what she felt on the inside. She wasn't attempting to be refined or attractive. People wanted her to be genuine. Observed. Even the Daily Texan wrote a describing her, referring to her as a daring percento be unique. However, independence comes with risk. Janis was in San Francisco when she fell deep in alcohol and drugs. She turned into infamous for abusing heroin, amphetamines, and whiskey from Southern Comfort. That bottle was incorporated into her persona. The drugs and alcohol were not only recreational, they assisted her in managing the pain she brought on by years of feeling unwelcome. However, they also began to remove her a dark route. It was at this time that she met J. at a pool hall. Whitaker. They turned into Janis moved in with her after they got close. It was the first relationship that Janis was aware of. In the 1960s, with a woman that was dangerous. However, Janis seemed indifferent to what was typical. The partnership did but last. Janis's crazy way of life made it difficult for anyone to remain near her for a long time. By 1965, Janis was not feeling well. She returned home just weighing 88 pounds to Texas. Her parents intervened after being startled to assist. Janis made an effort to tidy up. She gave up alcohol and drugs for a time, sheltered her appearance, styled her hair in a beehive, as well as enrolling in lemur anthropology in university. She even became engaged to IBM employee Peter DeLance's employee. A wedding was organized by them, and for an instant, it appeared as though Janis could get married. However, Peter put an end to the engagement and caused her heartache. Janis's attempt to lead a normal life failed, and she was drawn to freedom and music. Back Janis Joplin was in May 1966, Texas's Austin. She was performing folk music songs and considering becoming a member of Rocky Elevators on the 13th floor of Erickson. With the arrival of Chad Helms, Harold Acquaintance, who was well known in the music scene in San Francisco, made his the band required a vocalist who could match the city's wild new rock sound. He sent Travis Rivers will locate Janis and deliver San Francisco for her. She showed up on June 4, 1966. 6 days later, she experienced her first Big Brother in the Holdings Shotha Avalon Ballroom Company. The group James Gurley and Sam were there that evening. Peter Albin on bass, Andrew on guitars. Dave then plays the drums. The beginning wasn't flute. The band and Janis had to get accustomed to one another. It was almost a Janis will learn to sing this year. With the booming electric noise, in correspondence she referred to San Francisco as exotic. Her parents were unaware that she had moved until she started writing. Display. That year, Big Brother discovered Emsville stranded in Chicago. A marketer didn't compensate them. They were in a grave situation and dinked a contract with Mainstream Records on September 12, 1966. It was a horrible bargain. They had no prior funding and were forced to work for a union and get paid on par for everything arising from upcoming royalties. In December, from December 12th to December 14th, Los Angeles is where they recorded their debut album, Angelus. The meetings were hurried. The sound was too clear for a band, renowned for their boisterous live performances. However, the dub vocals of Janis were brilliant. Through in August, the album was released, March 23, 1967. It failed to reach the summit. It got to number 60. However, following their Everything About the MTV Pop Festival show, Columbia Records witnessed the enchantment and terminated their agreement. Janis didn't only sing. She assaulted the stage. She stomped. She trembled. She leaned, lowering themselves before the guitarists. The voice alternated between quiet murmurs and savage roars. Critics and admirers stated it was like having your mind when you watched her rewired. At one point, Janis remarked, "On stage, I make love to 25,000 different people, then I go home by myself." She didn't feel scared to smear her makeup or perspire. That phase presence changed the guidelines for women. Rock stars. Regarding her personal life, Janis disregarded the prevailing conventions. She had connections with both women and men. The most significant one included Peggy Cassera. They had an odd meeting, addressing one another via open windows. Their companionship developed into romantic. Observing Janis, Cassera stated she was transformed by singing with Big Brother. There it was, a passionate connection. They were concerned about one another but also fought against heroin addiction in tandem. Later, Cassera penned a book about it. Although some people were aware of, according to Janis, it didn't reveal the Halith truth. Janis understood how she was seen by the world. She was aware of her crazy drunkenness, unrestrained sexuality, and uncooked. People were surprised by her performances and utilized that. She thought it was beneficial. Make contact with your fans. Perhaps my song will be better appreciated by the audience if they believe I'm ruining myself. Janis felt that living according to her conditions was not regardless of the price. She was afraid of failing in front of everyone, but she thought staying loyal to herself was a sort of triumph. Next was MTV Pop. June 17, 1967, festival. More than 50,000 people arrived. Celebrities such as Jimmy Ive and Hendrix performed, but Janis, only 24 and hardly recognized outside of San Francisco, was the star of the show. She sang alongside so strongly that the audience fell silent, then burst into cheers. A single critic, "It felt like the earth had split," the writer stated. Accessible. On that day, Janis moved from sensation is unaware of it. The San Francisco she appeared on the main page of the Examiner. Stating, "In MTV Dreams Come True." Ball and Chain, one of her songs, Beck Amerinound, her tone changed from quiet to askrim. The beat was trampled into the stage. Even the mamas, Mama Cass and the papas, were observed giggling during the performance. The celebration distraught own regulation and consulted Big Brother to play once more the next day. No one else arrived to distinction. The second set was packed out the tent with titans of the music business. They were signed by Collier Records. Janis's future was set in stone. Individuals such as Clive, Columbia Records, Davis and Albert, Bob Dylan's manager, G-Man, observed what Davis referred to her performance as transformative. He immediately signed her. Grossman was her manager in no time. That the music industry already saw what fans felt. Janis was an unstoppable force. Disregard the media referred to her as the festival's queen. Her picture, Bales's barefoot, wild-haired Andering, was splattered all over the world's TV screens and publications. She turned into the first significant female rock star in America, entering a male-dominated scene. Janis became well-known in a matter of weeks. She transformed not only music but also fashion and notions of what a woman might be on stage. Prior to Janis's, individuals didn't think it's possible for a white woman to sing the blues. She disproved them. Her voice conveyed the suffering and spirit of the blues greats. A festival producer claimed that no white girl had ever been observed singing the blues in that way. Her unadulterated strength destroyed, tearing down barriers of gender and race. The futurist celebrities such as Chrissie Hynde and Stevie Nicks Wold later claimed that Janis demonstrated to them what was feasible. The story of Janis Joplin went haywire in 1968 when Big the Holding Company and Brother were released. Affordable excitations on August 12th. This wasn't your typical record. It turned to become a sensation, reaching the top spot on the 37th edition of the Billboard Top LPs charting the week of October 12, 1968. It even awaiting the sun. I knocked on the doors. From the first position. Why did that ever happen? What was more amazing was how it held on to tight non-consecutive positions weeks. Many were lured by the raw sound into believing that the record was live, but merely in fact. Ball and Chain was recorded live on March 8 at the Fillmore East, 1968. The remaining tracks were produced in a studio. To resemble an insane concert. This record was well liked for more than one season. It was recognized by the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2007. And Rolling Stone included it on their list AAF 500 Best Albums Ever Made. By towards the end of 1968, Cheap Thrills sold almost 1 million copies. That was an enormous start for any band in those days, much less a San Francisco-based psychedelic rock trio. Francisco, My Heart's Peace turned into an hymn, establishing Janis Joplin as a formidable taken seriously. She had a voice that blasting a song that nobody could match. Other songs such as Summertime, Unchained and Ball displayed the same strength. Rumbrums. On the album cover, comic books flew from shop shelves. In the end, Cheap Thrills became 1968's best-selling record. For a while it even sold more in the US than the Beatles. That show large Joplin was now. However, all of that there was a cost to fame. As the main focus concentrated on Joplin, internal fissures appeared at the group. The remaining individuals in Big Brother was forced into the darkness. The manager of Joplin and Collier Records, the pressure was increased by Albert Grossman encouraging her to become a solo performer. Joplin herself desired to try something new. Keyboards, horns, noises, and a certain styling cling toward R&B and soul, yet Big Brother preferred to use their uncooked jam. Band atmosphere, creative conflicts, celebrity, and heavy drug use prevented you from keep everything together. By the end of 1968, it was inevitable that they would divorce. Joplin was the world's richest person, but she was falling apart as well. Notoriety has brought more mayhem, more heroin, more drinking. She took a gulp of Southern comfort on stage. She leaned heavily toward drugs off stage, attempting to block off loneliness, worry, as well as pressure. Her public persona was audacious and unafraid. Within, she battled with many believed to be manic depression and severe concerns over her appearance. The situation was exacerbated by the rock scene. Drugs everywhere, partying, and nobo pondering. Addiction, a lot. Behind the woman with the wild persona took heartbreaking criticism and a sense of isolation in the throng. December 1968 saw Joplin caused her to shatter. She departed from Big Brother, even though they'd just achieved enormous success. She was aware that it was risky, yet the desire to produce something fresh was more powerful. In January 1969, she had the Cosmic Blues Band was created. Her recent the group had keyboards, horns, and a sound inspired by R&B and soul. Their initial I Got demo Cosmic Blues Again. The album on September 11, 1969. Mama came out, it quickly turned to gold. The critics didn't understand how to interpret it. She was adored by some. Unprocessed energy. The old Big was missed by others, a sense of brotherhood. The record company had hurried the record in an attempt to profit from inexpensive thrills, but despite its shortcomings, the voice of Joplin pierced every track. There were more highs that year and lows. When Woodstock took place on August 17, 1969, Joplin appeared on stage following a vicious wait for 10 hours. She was intoxicated, high or bath, but she nevertheless put her heart and soul into the tunes. The magic was witnessed by the audience as well as the mess. Her set failed to arrive into the first Woodstock movie, probably due to her state that evening, but it returned in later editions, demonstrating the unadulterated strength that made her not to be forgotten. Her private life remained as crazy as her work. Joplin disobeyed every rule. She had all kinds of lovers, types, genders, and well-known figures like Jim Christopherson and Morrison and much more. She made fun of her adventures, yet there was hunger underneath to experience acceptance and desire. She was startled. Republican America, her songs were prohibited in some places, and she even received arrested for her onstage remarks. However, she was indifferent. She lived according to her own rules. Despite the pain, however, by 1969, the negative aspects of that way of life were catching up. Heroin use increased dramatically. She had been spending daily income of roughly $200,000 in today's cash. Peggy Cassera, her buddy Beckamia, part of that perilous world, both taking part in the peaks and theaterist. Cassera's subsequent book attempted to share the narrative, but many people ask its truth. Ultimately, the medications prevailed. Joplin passed away on October 4, 1970. From an overdose at the age of 27, Caserta made it through but came at her own cost after years of, despite her ups and downs. Letters home from Joplin revealed a different story. Narrative. She corresponded with her port relatives Arthur, Texas, racked with doubt, guilt, and desire. She acknowledged feeling disoriented in the music industry and uncertain about her options. The abuse and intimidation she'd faced as a child never ceased to bother her. She was given the stage by fame, but not the tranquility she so desperately sought. Joplin Janis lived quickly, fell deeply in love, and then left behind a tale as unvarnished and devastating as her tunes. As soon as Shine 1966, she landed in San Francisco, that was pulled into a chaotic realm and liberty. It was there that she met Peggy, the woman who would transform her cassettenal life. Peggy and Janis's connection was hot and cold. They shared everything. The peaks of love, heroines, low points. Janis didn't consolate. When acknowledging your love you might be ruined by both men and women, she said. Didn's single quotes to give a damn. She was viewed as a disobeyed, and this was a storm to Peggy. Could never cling to. When Janis she peered out her hate window using the Ashbury apartment to summon Peggy, she appeared to be reaching for. She was aware that something would always slip via her fingers. However, Janis also wanted to feel wanted in order to demonstrate to the world that she was important. She had been back in Port Arthur, Texas, made fun of, they ranked her the ugliest and branded her ugly. Dude in college. The ache persisted. Her. She therefore pursued guys, well-known men like Chris Morrison, Joe Namath, and Jim Morrison Christopherson, and possibly Jimi Hendrix. She had more in mind than pleasure. She was making an effort to silence that voice. She wasn't enough, it said inside. The free love attitude of the 60s gave her a stage. However, even then, when the gatherings conquered, the music ceased. Janis sensed vacant. Maybe people, she once remarked, admired her songs more as a result. Oft believed she was ruining herself. She was, in many respects. She looked for something tangible. She became engaged. 3 yards. Last but not least, Seth Morgan, a 21-year-old pupil who additionally he entered her life during 1970 summer. Janis was being serious concerning him. She even declared that Seth wasn't actually present during the engagement for her. He moved in and out as if countless others. Their strategy for either trio with Peggy Caserta broke up. Just prior to Janis's passing. She sensed both of them abandoned it. That sense of isolation in her latter days. She hung heavy. She continued to in pursuit of someone who would stick with you. However, they never did. Not all romantic relationships ended terribly. She maintained her friendship with Christopherson. He gave her Bobby and Me. Mick G. Her biggest hit was the tune. Upon her passing, it became the #1 song. Just before her, Otis Redding had done it. The lyrics of the song were a perfect fit for her. It was all about freedom, longing and loss there, demonstrating how Janis could preserve the best of what she told Vaughn after love had vanished. That tune to reverberate now as a reminder of what she departed. Her last several months were a blend of genius and heartache. In Nurse, she founded the Full Tilt in the spring of 1970. The Boogie Band. She had a band at last that allowed her to be herself in terms of music. At Sunset Sound they made a recording, laying down the tracks in Hollywood. Pearl would be born. They were employed. Difficult. From July to October they recorded Move Over, Crybaby, Me and Mick G. Bobby. That album became a #1 success once she had left. It quadrupled platinum. Janis never witnessed its triumph. She went to the Landmark Motor Company, August 24, 1970, Hotel 105th room. That was the conclusion of her story. She jammed with pals, had parties. However, the burden of loneliness persisted her. Hotel staff would notice her walking barefoot while carrying her bottle of holding Southern Comfort, and everyone the music continued to flow. From her 3 days before to her passing, she captured a Mercedes. Just her, one take, and no instrument's voice, genuine and unfiltered. Janis was that person, no filter, no concealment. She made fun of that song's materialism, yet you could hear the pain that lies beneath the jokes. Herpel Rothschild, the producer, encouraged her to, together with Pearl, build something unique. Who was well known for his collaborations with The Doors, her first Janis to complete take after take. Her hoped the album would be a hit, and it was. Despite being polished, the flames remained. That shaped Janis's identity. Songs such as Bobby McGee, Me, and Crybaby continue to hit. Difficult today. Rothschild referred to it as the most fulfilling thing he's ever done, but it was a bittersweet experience. The record was a triumph encased in tragedy. Janis Joplin's final days were occupied by strategies, heartache, and choices tended tragically. Friday, October. On February 2, 1970, she had planned what she believed would be a private haven with 2 of her most trusted individuals. She plotted a menage at Peggy, her girlfriend Caserta, and Seth Morgan, her fiancé Thea. The meeting was scheduled to happen at Los Angeles' Landmark Motor Hotel, where she stayed while she worked on either of them. But her Pearl album, Caserta made a final decision when she didn't want to do anything alongside Morgan. Morgan thought that Caserta made alternative arrangements and would be present. Janis was not informed. She waited bewildered and isolated, unaware that both had reached. The loneliness that night struck with force. The individuals she relied on the most abandoned her at a time when she yearned for intimacy. The following the 3rd of October 1970, Janis was still unable to recover from the emotional shock. She got to Noto purchased heroin from her dealer. While that conversation she revealed what had occurred, she informed him of both of her pals. Had raised her. That admission demonstrated how badly she felt abandoned and hurt. It was not merely a drug transaction. It was apathetic, last-ditch effort to numb the agony. She purchased heroin that day, and it was remarkably pure. The batch was identical. That would murder a number of additional people in Los Angeles on the weekend. Janis feeling vulnerable and hurt. I was unaware that the injection she made would be considerably more powerful than she was accustomed to. On October 4, 1970, the evening Janis was discovered dead on her hotel's floor, room 105 of the Landmark Motor Company, alleging she had passed out in between her beds in the nightstand without any indication of struggle. The exceptional purity of the heroin and her system's booze made it a lethal combination. Most likely, she passed away shortly after the injection, potentially hitting her head while she was falling. Her path. John Cook, her manager, found her body following her absence from a recording session. On that day, she had been planned to capture vocals 4th Blues Buried Alive. When Cook went to the hotel when they didn't show up, she had parked her Porsche outside. Within, he discovered her dead body. Though the shock of revelation sent ripples through the realm of music. Only a few hours. Janis had previously been vivacious, all set to finish her record. Janis weighs about 27 years old when she passed away. She went by the name incorporated into what would be referred to as Thea, collection of renowned musicians known as 27 Club. Passed away at a similar age. Jimi Hendrix, who died 16 days prior to Janis, participated in it. Jim Morrison, Winehouse, Brian, and Kurt Cobain. Jones would be added as well. Janis, just as she was completing Death Struck, her best-selling album. It was airy conclusion that contributed to the legends of the perilous edge of rock and roll. Pearl was made available in January 1971. 3 months following her passing, it turned into her best-selling album. It remained at number 149 on the Billboard 200 weeks. The album was also a number 1 hit in Canada, the Netherlands, and Australia. It sold more than 4 million copies in the US alone. Copies, the complete cover photo of Janis of color and vitality became recognizable. One Buried Alive in the Blues. The track was abandoned as a silent instrumental ignoring the voice that was never able to complete it. She recorded Bobby and Me. Her only number 1 single was McGee. It topped the Billboard Hot 100 list. March 1971. Only a few days prior. The song was recorded. Her demise. It encapsulated both her strength and its susceptibility, as well as its narrative of loss and parting reflected her own life. Chris Christopherson, one of its co-authors, was heartbroken upon hearing her account. Following her death, the ashes of Janis Weary dispersed throughout Moraine County, Shoreline, just like she had requested in her will. They were released over Stinson by a tiny plane, the Pacific Ocean, and the beach. She departed for a last celebration, $2,500, in October. On the 26th of 1970, friends got together at the Lion's Share Club. Brownies were present, filled with cannabis, copious amounts of alcohol, and music. Drinks are on the invitations, said Pearl. Single quote, it was the ideal send-off for someone who led a wild and independent life. Janis was admitted into the Hall of Fame for Rock and Roll in 2005. She was awarded a Grammy Lifetime Award for achievement. These accolades validated what fans were already aware of. Janis, the essence, passion, and voice of Joplin, will never go away. Her legacy endures, a reminder of the strength and cost of burning too intensely.